Is it an epic or epic failure? The Big Review. Movies, games, and TV in focus.
Pulse95.
You know, honestly, I thought we were going to dismiss this film completely, but we said, let's go watch it. I'm really curious because I saw a bit of the trailer. But honestly, I don't regret watching this film, and there's so much to unfold from it. This is The Last Duel. This is a historical drama film that actually is based on a true event that took place in 14th century France. This was France's last sanctioned duel between a French knight and a Norman squire. Sort of a trial by combat due to not only a battle against for honor, for truth, but for somebody's freedom. And
Yes.
Oh my God,
that is the least we can say. So the story stars Matt Damon as Jean de Carouge, who is the knight, and Jacques Legris was played by Adam Driver, and Marguerite, who is Carouge's wife, was played by the amazing Jodie Comer. And of course, we do see Ben Affleck, who played Count Pierre.
it took me halfway through the film to realize that was Ben Affleck. He lost a lot of weight.
He was really good. Honestly, do you know what was interesting? I feel like if Matt and Ben should have switched roles, that would have been really good as well. That would have worked fine, pretty well.
No, but it was, I think, for the cast, they were great.
The cast was great. Everything about it was great. Ridley Scott did a great job by adapting the story, because it's also basically based. Yes, it is based on an actual set of events, but it's mostly based on a book that came out all the way back in 2004, and there were rumors of this movie coming, basically being greenlit for a long, long time, and it wasn't until 2019 that, it was first announced that here's the cast members, the directors, bit by bit, until we got the movie. So let's get right into it. Obviously, the story is about how Carouge's wife was assaulted by Legris. And what I really liked about this movie is the fact that we do get 3 different points of views.
Yeah.
And it says chapter 1, the truth according to Carouge's point of view, and then the truth according to Legris, and then eventually the truth according to Marguerite. And let me say, the first third was incredibly boring. I was looking at my phone, I'm not gonna lie. But then the thing is, I had to remember that this is sort of the typical sort of historical drama. You have to accept that. It is not everybody's cup of tea, but it is what it is. And then slowly, bit by bit, as the story unfolds, your emotions start bubbling in when we get Jacques Legris' point of view, and then eventually Marguerite's point of view. And here's the thing. As I said, I was incredibly angry throughout the movie, even though at the beginning I was a little bit lost in terms of trying to keep up with the dates, because they were moving years by years by years, and not like 1 year, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 3, 4, 5 years. And throughout the entire thing, I was like, okay, this is fine, this is interesting, Last Duel, assault, etc. But then, by the second half, I got angry. Sorry, the second third got angry. By the last third, here's the thing. I saw a girl right across me. She was sitting and watching the movie. And I wish if the camera can switch around to my face right now, because this is how she was sitting. At the end, she was like, I can see her from afar. This is exactly how she was sitting. And even though the cinema was dark, I think it was her and her husband or her brother, or whoever it is, was with her. Even he was like, just sitting like this, because that is how frustrating that movie is. It is very reminiscent of some sorts of, I'd say, beliefs and values that are still evident right now, but even though it is still part of a lot of judiciary systems and a lot of belief systems, that the things that they were saying, but it was a lot more concrete by then, that the truth was so, like, I don't know how to explain it, that basically they were hoping that luck, even though they were saying God can determine whether she was saying the truth or not, But the thing is, they were just basing it on luck and sort of if one of them is better at fighting or not.
It depicted a very cruel world, foreign to us nowadays, but still,
it's not.
Still,
I have to think it's not foreign to. That's my point. Is
it's that those times were a little bit more extreme, a lot more male dominant.
Yeah.
But it was still a world that feels very lived in, feels very human, and that story structure for me personally, experimental. My sister complained about how it felt a bit repetitive as they went back over and over to different accounts. But it was actually very essential.
Exactly.
Because every time we revisited a new scene from a different perspective, we see how these characters bend and twist the truth for what they believe is right. What they believe is the true account of those events. But matter of fact, we actually see the flaws in these characters and the hypocrisy of these characters.
Exactly. And I have to slightly disagree with your sister because I understand what she means when she says that it kind of felt that it was repetitive.
Yeah.
I did feel that at some point. But actually, by Marguerite's part, I felt that there were some parts that were essential to show that were not shown. For example, like I'm trying to remember some of the scenes.
So, for example, I thought that John's character, I thought that his wife loves him and is very supportive. That's what he sees. But in her perspective, she can't really stand him, and she tries to be with him, but he's a very aggressive person.
Exactly. But the part that I really wanted to see, for example, because based on what you said especially, is that there was a scene from John's point of view where she kind of tells him, it's how or where, basically to go to that event, to that birth event where they were celebrating the birth of a son of his friend, and she was kind of like, you've been kind of out of court for an entire year. I think we should make face and show them that who we are and what we are. And she was very happy and a giddy person. And then when we go to her point of view and we realize that in general she was not the happiest person, even though she was trying her best within this relationship.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to see that scene because when we saw it from his point of view, she was like so happy and giddy. And he's like, let's go out, let's go have a party and show them we're a great couple and we're happy and we're resilient and we're strong and show them who the Karujas are. But I really wanted to see how did she actually approach him in that moment. I feel like she was a lot more serious and perhaps a little bit timid despite the fact that she was quite strong in herself. And I love the fact that she was thriving when he was not around. And that is just some of the things we have been talking about when we're reviewing this movie, and we're not done reviewing this movie. Again, if you have watched The Last Duel, share with us your opinion. 4215 Etisalat or do. We'd love to hear from you. And we're going to continue it after the short break.
Pulse 95.
We continue our review of The Last Duel by Ridley Scott, starring Matt Damon, Jodie Comer, Ben Affleck, and Adam Driver. Now, we were saying right before the break that every single point of view just shows you how different every person saw the same exact events, and even some different events as well, as we go on their solo point of views every once in a while. And it was very, very eye-opening how basically, not eye-opening in the sense that we don't know that those things kind of exist, but rather eye-opening just when you're watching that movie and your own, when you reach your own opinions are switched a little bit. Even though from the get-go, I was like, those guys are fishy. They do not seem like they're saying the truth. And by the time you get till the end, because I'll have to admit that even though at the beginning when we got what's his name, Jacques Legree's point view from John's point of view, I was still fishy about the both of them. And then when they switched the other way around, I'm like, they're both still fishy because even the way, I'm pretty sure it has to do with the way that the movie is presented itself, as in the cutting and the editing and the point of views themselves, because even the way they say things and the way they claim they said things is very different. The way they look at things, the way they explain things is just very different, even when they're talking about the same thing that happened.
They perceive themselves as better than they. It's like they have this certain image about themselves and they think they're right, they're better, they're honorable. But no, and weirdly enough, halfway through this film, I was sympathizing with both of these characters.
I was not.
And just the slightest of ways. For example, like when John he's not given his rightful due from the count, or that they took his land. I was like, yeah, that's kind of upsetting. You know, he worked his whole life for that. But then we see a darker truth and a different perspective.
But don't you see that from the beginning, that because he is such a proud person, from literally the first scene, he was all about pursuing honor on behalf or in the behest of every single thing around him. That's why his mother said, you lost the entire castle, you lost the role because of yourself,
pride,
because of your pride. And this was a recurring theme for both of them. They were both very proud, even though Legree saw himself as sort of this intellectual person who was above everybody else, simply because he appeared smarter. But honestly, they're exactly the same people. And at the end of it, the only person who was hurt was obviously the women around them.
Yeah.
And you could see, if you notice, that every single female character in the very last third of the movie, whether it was the queen, his mother, her best friend, I think was her name, I forgot her name, and the housekeeper, and obviously Marguerite herself, every single person, the way they were just taking everything was very different, and they looked like they were in a completely different world in comparison to the men who were bickering with each other.
Yeah.
And we have to say, if you're going to watch the movie, there are lots of trigger warnings, whether it's violence or assault, and just the hard, cold truth of the things that women were living through and probably are still definitely living through right now. Perhaps even though it was a lot more extreme back then, but it's still extreme in some places to this day. So
There was a profound scene. I just want to say it real
last
quick.
one?
It's the mother-in-law talking to Marguerite, and she says that there is no justice in this world, only the power of men, and that is really the theme of this film. And I carry that with me after watching, and I still think about it.
The power and pride of men. That is what unfortunately drove the world back then, and still continues to drive the world to an extent right now. Again, final verdict.
Final verdict. The Last Duel does something very experimental with the way it tells a story, but I think it works to such an amazing degree that I came out of that film honestly emotionally distraught, and that finale had me gasping like till the end. And I think for that this story is just, I think, is an essential watch to people out there. A historical drama that honestly is probably the best one this year. So my score for this is a 9 out of 10.
For me, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. And again, even though it is an essential watch, I have to remind everybody, lots of trigger warnings.
It can be uncomfortable. It can be unnerving.
Very, very unnerving and uncomfortable. So if you cannot handle this, we say that you should skip this movie. This was our review of The Last Duel. We're going to be taking a short break, and we're going to be talking about a lot more things. So stay tuned for that and so much more right here on the Afternoon Karak.
If you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.